to tonight's Talk with Paramedics webinar. My name is Jem and I'm the Future Students Lead here at our beautiful Ballarat campus. This webinar is going to go for approximately an hour, depending on the questions that do come through. If you do happen to have any questions for our panel members this evening, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen and I can forward them through to our panel members to answer. But without any further ado, we might make a start. So I'll just start with an acknowledgement of country. So in recognising Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's spiritual and cultural connection to country, and in continuing ACU's commitment to reconciliation, I would like to commence this webinar by acknowledging the First Peoples and traditional owners and custodians of the country where ACU campuses are located, which tonight I'm on the land of the Wadawurrung, so here in Ballarat. We respectfully acknowledge our elders past and present and remember that they have passed on their wisdom to us in various ways. Let us hold this in trust as we work and serve our communities. So I'll just provide an overview of the undergraduate course options that we do provide for paramedicine. So we offer a straight Bachelor of Paramedicine, which is a 3-year degree at our Brisbane and Melbourne campuses. We also offer an honours year at our Ballarat, Brisbane, Canberra, Melbourne and North Sydney campuses. And finally, we also offer a combined Bachelor of Nursing and Bachelor of Paramedicine program at our Ballarat, Brisbane and Canberra campuses. So all our panellists tonight have actually completed the double degree program. We also have some postgraduate course options that may be of interest as well. Up to a Master in Health Professional Education. So these are for people working in the field who may be interested in working in more of an educational or training capacity. We also offer up to a Master in Mental Health, as well as Health Administration. So for those graduates who may be looking at working in more of a leadership and management type capacity. So there's a full listing of our postgraduate course options at the website there at the bottom of your screen for further information. So now we head to our panel session of the evening. So I'm joined by 2 alumni students as well as a current student of ACU. So I have first up Matthew or Matt Faravoni, who is an ALS paramedic and registered nurse, who completed the Bachelor of Nursing in 2010 and our graduate certificate in clinical nursing in 2013. Matt completed the Bachelor of Nursing at our Ballarat campus and then the grad cert, the post-grad studies he completed at the Melbourne campus in conjunction with the Royal Melbourne Hospital. So welcome, Matt. Secondly, we have Darcy Cummins, who is also an ALS paramedic and registered nurse with Ambulance Victoria. So Darcy completed our double degree here at the Ballarat campus in 2020. Welcome, Darcy. And unfortunately, Darcy has to leave at about 20 to 7 tonight, so for a shift that he's got coming up. So where at all possible, I will direct questions to Darcy in the first instance. And we also are joined with by Millie Pollock, who is a 3rd-year student in our combined Bachelor of Nursing and Paramedicine program as well at our Brisbane campus. So welcome, Millie. So I might start off with the first question I have, and I'll direct this to you firstly, Darcy, is if you can provide us a bit more background about why you wanted to study paramedicine and what your job actually entails now.
So I wanted to be a paramedic. It was always something I always wanted to do. It was part of what I was doing in volunteering for Lifesaving Victoria. It was seemed to be in the natural progression of what everyone else was doing at that time. And it just wanted to have something a little bit exciting, didn't want to work in an office and have something different every day. Right now, I'm working as an advanced life support paramedic down in the Bass Coast region of Victoria, working all with students, with community officers all over the state, as well as working in Metro every so often, just to keep myself on my toes and doing something different, I guess.
Right, so a lot of different areas. That's cool.
Yeah.
Matt, can I get you to answer that question next?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, obviously I've had a slightly different pathway to Darcy as well. I initially started off in nursing, worked as a nurse for a bit over 8 years in lots of different areas, and decided I'd always looked at the paramedic courses, and working as a paramedic is quite attractive, but sort of didn't feel I was completely ready. But after a fair period of time in nursing, I decided I'd give it a shot. So went back to study, and yeah, just loved it. I think that the big difference for me coming from nursing, I mean, it's still, this is sort of a bit of cliche, but you're still helping people at the end of the day, but also I guess the technology and learning that you get through nursing and through the paramedicine, it's yeah, it's just something that's always interested me, I guess. Yeah, and so I've been working now as a paramedic for 3.5 years, and yeah, completely love it. Occasionally still dip my toes into the nursing, but yeah, definitely more into paramedicine now. Just as I said, the autonomy of the job. You never know what you're going to get on the day. Every day is slightly different. Yeah, that's where I've come from.
Thank you. And Millie, can I ask what drew you to want to study paramedicine?
Yeah, so when I first left high school, I initially started in a bachelor's degree of biomedical science. And figured out very quickly that wasn't for me, that wasn't my speed, but I knew I liked something in the kind of biology or health realm. And then one of my friends introduced me to the dual degree. And I loved the idea of it because of the flexibility of both nursing and paramedicine, and the different career pathways and options that they both offer separately. But yeah, I haven't looked back since. I love both of them pretty equally at the moment.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Darcy, can you describe a typical day in your job as a paramedic?
A typical day, it'll be very different to what Matt's typical day is, but I'm currently working in a rural area, so it's a little bit quieter than, say, the Metro Melbourne area. So you start the day, you get there, you meet your partner, whoever you're working with for the day or for the month, just have a quick discussion, you check all your equipment for the morning. Of course, most paramedics love a coffee, so we probably go for a coffee with the other crews that are on and have a good chat about the day, or just check in with each other, just make sure everyone's mental health's going well, or if there's been any interesting clinical decisions or jobs that's been happening. Then we'll head back to our ambulance branch, we'll do some study. I've been working with a lot of graduate paramedics, so we sit there, we study, we go through all their paperwork. And then at some point, we probably should get a job, and we'll head out to that job and assess the patient, take them to the hospital and complete paperwork. And then depending on the rest of the day, we can keep doing that, or we'll just go back and keep studying or having some downtime from work, because it's quite important to have some downtime.
Yeah, I can imagine, Darcy. And there's a question that's just come through the chat, which I might get you to answer if you could, Darcy. And the question is, can you become a paramedic without studying a paramedicine degree, or is it required?
No, you can start off with a, I'm not 100% on this, but you can start off with a TAFE course, and you can do it's a certificate in paramedical sciences, but you come out of that with a lower qualification, which you have to work up to your bachelor degree to become a paramedic. I'm not 100% on the TAFE and how that works, but that is also another option if you don't find yourself not getting into the degree straight away.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's a good idea is to investigate what TAFE pathway options there might be as such. Thanks, Darcy. Matt, can you describe a typical day in your job?
Yeah, certainly. Oh, well, it's definitely similar to Darcy. So I work in metropolitan Melbourne, but more on the outskirts. So I guess yeah, start the day off, see who you're working with for the day. It's generally the same person each month, either qualified or a student. You check over your vehicle, make sure everything's in working order, because as I said, you never know what you're going to end up to in the day and what piece of equipment you'll need. Once that's all done, yeah, we're basically logged on, ready to respond to any case that could come up in the area. Sometimes we're straight out the door. More often than not, we are, and it could be out all day. But yeah, other days, yeah, we do have a bit of time to sit around. We could do a bit of study, go for a coffee. Yeah, just do our own thing almost at branch. But yeah, most of the times we are out on the road, either attending cases or transporting patients, or recently, especially in the last few years, sitting at hospital with patients waiting for beds. But yeah, it's hard to describe any single day, I guess, because one day you could potentially do nothing, or even just one very low acuity job, and the next day you're slammed with very, very sick critical patients, and yeah, it just varies so much. So I guess that you're just going to be ready for anything really, which the training's good to yeah, get you prepared for that. Yeah.
There's actually a question that's also just come through the chat that might be good for you to answer here, Matt.
Yeah.
Can you just let us know what the difference is between an ALS paramedic and just a paramedic as such?
Oh, it's different in most states around Australia, even, but in Victoria specifically, there's different levels of paramedics. We have ambulance community officers, which, as Darcy was explaining before, they may have a TAFE or a diploma qualification, or they may have a qualification from on the job, which they're what we'd say is a BALS, or a basic life support paramedic. Then advanced life support are generally degree trained. And this is Victoria specifically. And then on top of that, we have the MICA paramedics, which are mobile intensive care ambulance paramedics, which again have a higher skill set. They've gone on and done further training and education to get to that area as well. So it's all just they're different. I guess all got different clinical skills, different clinical levels, but again, it's different state by state. I think since registrations come in, a lot of the states are starting to align to what is a paramedic, what is an ALS, what is an intensive care paramedic in the last few years, but still, yeah, I can only really speak for Victoria at the moment. Millie might know a little bit more about the system in Brisbane. Yeah, I think I answered that, did I?
Thanks, Matt. I might actually jump to another question to Darcy, and then I'm going to ask Millie a question. Darcy, having studied the double degree in nursing and paramedicine, if the ultimate aim of a prospective student who's looking at the double degree, but they know that they really want to become a paramedic as their ultimate goal, would you still, what would your advice be? You know, what are the advantages of studying that double degree in nursing and paramedicine?
I think the advantages are like work-life balance. Say if you don't get, it's quite difficult to get a paramedic job, so you can always fall back onto nursing while you wait. You might love nursing, it might be different for you. It's just so wide. You can also, if you want to have a family and the shift work's not for you as a paramedic, you can go to nursing, or it's just so interchangeable, and the skills are very, very similar to each other. Like they complement themselves really well. Personally, I did the interprofessional graduate program, which was run out of Ballarat Hospital in conjunction with Ambulance Victoria. So I did a graduate year that was 18 months long, and I did nursing and paramedics at the same time. So it was quite intensive, it was quite fun, and I think they just complemented so well, because I did my nursing in ED and ICU. I think it made it easier for when I came on road with Ambulance Victoria, that I was used to a lot of different clinical presentations and how patients would present, and not to be too worried about how they're presenting, and know the natural course of being with them. And then equally, once you get to hospital, you know the system, you know how they get triaged, you know how the doctors and nurses work, and how you can help them help you. I think it works really, really well. And it's not for everyone. Some people might get a paramedic graduate year and decide it's not for them, and that way they've got another degree to fall back on.
Yeah, it does provide great options, the double degree for sure. Thanks, Darcy. I'm going to ask Millie a question now, and it's in regards to your placements to date, Millie. So you're in third year of the program, so you've got another year to go. Is that correct, Millie?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So where have you completed your placements so far? How have they been organised? And what is the difference between what you're studying at uni compared to what you're learning on placement?
Sure. So throughout the past 3 years, I basically go back and forth between a nursing placement followed by a paramedicine placement, all of which are organised through the university, and we get notified when and where we go. So you don't have to worry about organising any of that. But typically you'll do 2 to 4 weeks usually of nursing, and roughly about 3 weeks of paramedicine placement at any given placement block. And so usually for paramedicine, you'll be at a local station, you'll be set at a local station, have a couple of mentors that you go on their shift for those 3 weeks. And then with nursing, you'll be at a hospital in a specific ward, and just be on shift work with those nurses in that ward for that set period of time as well. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you do about 800 nursing hours in the dual degree and about 500 paramedicine hours throughout the entire degree. And that's just kind of slowly increased throughout the last couple of years. I think I've got something like 12 weeks of placement coming up in third year. So it does get pretty full on towards the end, but they ease you into it definitely within the first year and a half. It's nice and slow introduction to what placement is.
Yeah, thanks, Millie. We've got a lot of questions coming through the chat. This is really, really great. I might pose another question that's come through the chat to Matt, which is, would it be more beneficial to go straight into a paramedicine degree or to get some life experience first?
Oh, that's a good question, because I guess everyone's a little bit different to when they're ready to get into study in general, I guess, and to get into work. I could speak myself personally. I feel like it's good to get that life experience. I guess know how to talk with patients, get a bit of exposure through other areas. In my case, it was through nursing. In saying that, though, I've worked with heaps of paramedics that are straight out of school, straight out of uni, and hit the ground running, and they're completely fine and on the ball and up to everything. So I guess it's definitely a personal decision. I guess the best thing to do would be to you could always start off with the study, see how you go with it, defer if it's not right for you at the time. Even before that, see if you can contact any paramedics that you might know in the community. Have a chat with them as well. They may be able to get you a little bit of a tour or something of the station, or even some form of observation shift if you really want to see what it's all about. but yeah, no, it's, I guess as far as life experience, everyone's different. Yeah, some people at 21 years of age have had massive life experiences, and some not so much, and same for the other end of the spectrum too. Yeah, I guess it's not the years of experience, it's the experience in your years that count. So yeah.
Well said, Matt. Great. We've got another question that's come through the chat for Millie. So Millie, in swapping uni courses, did you have any trouble doing so? And were you originally at ACU for your initial degree, or did you have to swap uni to go into the double degree that you're doing now?
Yes, that's a good question. I studied biomed at QUT, one of the big unis in Brisbane. And then I deferred and then dropped out of that course for the remainder of my first year out of high school, and then went into the dual degree the following year. So at the time I did OP, my OP was still valid, and I just reapplied as a school leaver would do, just with our normal QTAC applications, and then just got accepted. At the time, the ATAR or OP requirements weren't quite as high as they are at the moment. So yeah, I didn't have any issues going straight across.
Okay, great. Thanks, Millie. Another question that's come through the chat, and I might ask Darcy this one. Does the Bachelor of Paramedicine offer only in-vehicle placements or in hospital placement too? Does that make sense, Darcy? I think it's just wanting to find out. Yeah.
So I'm not sure about other unis, but Ballarat was on ambulances, was initially the first year placements with a non-emergency crew like Royal Flying Doctors or St. John's Ambulance. In Victoria anyway, I'm not sure about the others. Then you go into on ambulance placements with the emergency crews. Personally, for some reason, Ballarat, we did 2 weeks in Ballarat ED, working as a paramedic scope. So we're able to do things that student nurses weren't allowed to do. I don't know if they still do that. And I think it might have been a shortage of placement with paramedics on road, but I'm sure they kept it around because we fed back really, really good notes, because it was awesome. It gave us a lot of skills, lots of airway skills, lots of medication skills. So I hope that answers your question. I'm not really sure.
No, thanks, Darcy. I think it does. Millie, just back to you on that one. In terms of the placements that you have done for paramedicine, have you had any experience in a hospital setting as opposed to there in the ambulance?
So my experience has been a little bit different from what it sounds like Darcy's was like. All of my paramedicine placements are supposed to be on road. So you're with acute care paramedics, which is what you are when you graduate from the bachelor's degree. I've had a couple of friends work with critical care paramedics, which is the equivalent of a MICA in Victoria. So you're usually on road for those placements. I have heard scenarios where students at the end of their third year haven't met the placement hour requirements, and QAS doesn't have any space to take them back on road, and in which case they try and slot them into an emergency setting, but that is very rare, and most placements get done on road, in Brisbane at least.
Yeah, thanks, Millie. Matt, I might ask this next question to you. Is it realistic to keep up both registrations, so nursing and paramedicine?
Realistic, as in, I guess, achievable, or is that?
Yeah, I guess is that what you done? And
yeah, definitely. I guess at the end of the day, you can choose to go one way or the other, which a lot of people certainly do, especially from the dual degree. But I think it is good to keep both registrations up. It keeps your options open. As Darcy was talking about before too, if it gets to a point where shift work isn't completely agreeing with you, you do have a lot more flexibility in nursing than what you necessarily would in ambulance. It's just it can be a bit of a juggle. I guess to keep up with the CPD requirements, you need to keep up some recency of practice as well. So you need to pick up shifts where you can. So you need an employer that's willing to take you on and potentially only let you do 1 or 2 shifts a month if you're working full time in ambulance, for example. Yeah, that's probably the best way I can answer that. But yeah, at the end of the day, yeah, it's a lot of people do choose one way or the other. In saying that, though, I know still quite a few people that still do work in both, and they manage it quite well. Yeah, it comes down to your preference and yeah, how much time you've got in your life as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. Darcy, another question's come through the chat. How fit do you have to be a paramedic?
I think it's good to have a good base layer of fitness. A lot of our equipment's quite heavy. So say the monitor we use is about 20 kilos with everything in it. So you'd want to be able to lift it and lift it in different ways. We, unfortunately, as paramedics, are prone to injuries. If you are lifting heavy things or do something incorrectly, there's lots of mitigation for that. But it is good to have a base layer of fitness so that you aren't at risk of hurting yourself if you end up turning too hard or lifting something too high. We do have a fitness test. It's a pretty strenuous fitness test. As when you start uni, to go on placements, you have to do the fitness test. It's the same as what you do as a paramedic, but from there on, it's up to you to maintain your fitness.
Okay, and just following on from that, Darcy, is there a psych assessment that you have to pass as well, or? There
is a psych assessment. It's not involved in an undergrad, so at uni you don't have to do a psych assessment, but when you do go for a job, it's quite an extensive testing. It takes up to 3 hours. It's mainly online, and then once you finish that, you do have a discussion with a clinical psychologist. It all changed with COVID, so I'm not 100% sure what it is now, but it is very extensive because Ambulance Victoria want the people that are least likely going to have issues down the track, just for safety and for them, I think.
Okay, thanks, Darcy. Millie, we've got another question that's come through for you. What are your semester timeframes? And are they extended to allow for your placement hours?
Yeah, so the semesters are definitely extended to allow for placements. So for example, a normal semester for me would look like, I think you start end of February and around July would be semester 1, and semester 2's beginning of August to end of October, beginning of November, depending on your exams. And typically speaking, my placements would fall outside of those semesters. Occasionally, you can get mid-semester placements, but those are more common for single degree students. So if you're doing a straight nursing or straight paramedicine degree, you're more likely to get a placement in the middle of a semester because it's easy to work around your timetables. But as a dual degree student, most of my placements are outside of those timeframes. So for example, I finish exams on the 31st of October, and then I have a 2-week placement in November, a 2-week placement in December, and a 3-week placement in January, which is all my summer holidays. So you do have to be aware of that going into the degree, that it's going to be a lot of extra work on top of it, and a lot of your other friends will be kicking back relaxing while you're not getting paid to work.
Thanks, Millie. Maybe I'll put this next question to Matt. Would volunteering through St John's Ambulance or SES be beneficial in terms of experience and or getting a job?
Yes, yeah, to both of those things. I guess one for experience, you'll get to potentially work with ambulance paramedics before you go into study or even going into work, especially working with St John's or with CFA, SES. You could potentially work with paramedics on a job, on a case. So it definitely helps with experience with that. I myself went through SES years ago before I studied as well, which that was probably where I found I wanted to eventually go into paramedicine. Oh, sorry, what was the second part of the question again? It was, oh, would it help? Yes, certainly. Yeah, I think from memory, this is more employer specific, but they did ask if had any experience, any volunteer experience in particular, that would boost the application for applying to be a paramedic with Ambulance Victoria. And yeah, I remember putting in there the experience with SES and a few other volunteer organisations as well. And I'd like to think that probably helped the whole application. But at the end of the day, definitely, I guess the big thing with that is the experience that you get from those organisations. Yeah, working within a team, responding to incidents. It's very similar to ambulance in that way. So yeah, I'd probably highly recommend that. Probably almost throw it over to Darcy too, I think, because you mentioned you with Life Saving Victoria as well. So I'm sure that yeah, helped make his decisions as well. And
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
want to answer that too there, Darcy, that would be great.
Yeah, I think volunteering is great. It's also great for your sort of experience and life experience, because you learn to talk to people when you volunteer, and you can, depending on where you volunteer, you can see people at their worst, and that's what we generally see as a paramedic. And it's learning to empathize and just generally be around people that need help. I think it's also a good introduction to see if you are sort of not being mean or anything, cut out for the job. So if you see blood and you pass out, you know it's probably being a paramedic's not for you. But I think it's a great idea. And even working for a first aid company prior to is also a really good experience. It doesn't make any difference with employers, but I think it's just good experience for people to put their skills into practice.
Yeah, great advice there. Thanks, Darcy. Millie, we've got another question regarding placement. It seems to be a real interest area. How far away from the uni are you sent away on placement as such?
Sure. There's no real definitive answer to that question. I mean, within your state, I guess, is the limit, typically speaking. I have been as far away. So I'm in Brisbane. I got sent to the sunny coast, which is about an hour and a half from where I am. That was considered a regional placement for me. That being said, though, I had a friend one got sent to Longreach, the other got sent to Cairns. So those are a significant travel away from uni. That being said, though, they're pretty good with, we have student forums where if you get a placement that doesn't work for you, whether that's time frame or location wise, we put it on the Facebook page, and then students kind of swap around placements to get something that works for them. And as long as you can take that back to the uni and be like, hey, this placement doesn't work for me for XYZ, here's my alternative. They're pretty good with letting you swap. But most of my placements have been less than an hour away from home.
Oh, that's great. Cool. Thanks, Millie. Matt, I'll ask this next question first of you. What do you find the most challenging aspect of working as a paramedic? And following on from that, what do you find the most rewarding?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, well, I guess go with the challenging first. I guess as a paramedic, when you come onto a shift, you're there to respond to people that are potentially having the worst day of their lives. So you've got to put aside anything that's happening in your life. If you're tired, hungry, stressed, you need to be able to really switch that off and focus on the job. And sometimes I find that can be a challenge, especially with shift work. If getting woken up at 2:30, 3 in the morning, all of a sudden having to be switched on, that's probably one of the biggest challenges for myself personally. But definitely the rewards outweigh the challenges. At the end of the day, probably one of the most rewarding parts of the job is it's quite a cool job in the way that we get all this training, we get all these skills that we get taught during uni, during our graduate year on road. We get all this cool equipment. pretty cool cars to drive around in, and then we get to take all that to patients and help them when they're having pretty horrible days, and get to make them better in a way most of the time. I guess that's probably the most rewarding part of the job, getting to put all that knowledge and skills that we've learned over the time and get to use all the equipment we're given and go out and help people. It's again, sounds very cliche, but that's definitely why most paramedics do the job. Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. Darcy, I can see you nodding your head a lot while Matt was talking there. But yeah, would you be able to share, how your answer to that question as well?
It's pretty much the exact same as Matt's. That's why I was agreeing. I think the hardest thing is not only the night shifts, but when you're hungry, when you're tired, when you just want to go home to your family and friends, they're all having fun without you on the weekends. And I think that's the hardest thing. Because it can really get you down sometimes, but you just got to switch off, switch on to work and try and help. And that's the best part. You're actually making meaningful change with people, whether it's taking them to hospital or figuring out how to keep people at home or just pointing people in the right direction to get the help that they need, because not everyone needs to go to hospital. And I think that's the great thing. People open up their doors, talk to us, will tell us their deepest, darkest secrets, and we try to help them in the best way. And more often than not, we help. And I think that's the best thing that we can do.
Thanks, Darcy. Another quick question that's just come through the chat. How many hours a week are you typically out on call?
I work at a 40-hour branch. So I do 2 days, an afternoon and a night shift. That's the base hours, so that's 40 something hours a week, and then you add on whatever overtime you do, so you can do upwards of 4 to 5 hours at the worst case scenario on your shift, or just generally you're finishing a half an hour to an hour later. You can really push that if you want to, but I think it's best if you just take it slow and don't do as much overtime as a lot of people do.
Mm-hmm. Now, Darcy, I'm just conscious of the time. Do you have to leave now?
Yes.
Thanks, Darcy,
No
for joining us this evening. I might go back to Millie. In terms of what you've studied to date in your 3 years in the double degree so far, Millie, what have you found to be the most challenging aspects and the rewarding aspects of working in this field on your placements?
Sure. So I think obviously a lot of what the other two have said is very similar for students as well. Like, you're in that environment while you're on placement, so the same things are true. But I think more specifically as a student, one of the most challenging things would be, as you work through your degree, when you're on placements, part of your role as a student is to step up and run a job, to be the one making those kind of clinical judgments, clinical decisions, obviously with support of mentors as well. But that can be really tricky. Like, sometimes you walk into a job and you're just like, I don't know, I have no idea what to even ask this person or where to start with, what kind of treatment, what treatment pathway I want to go down. And that is so daunting. Like, when you've got a very sick patient, a sick patient who's possibly having a really horrible day, and they're looking at you to go help. And as a student, it's really daunting to have to just rely on your knowledge and be confident in what you've learned, and kind of just trust that your mentors have got your back as well. And I think it's one of the biggest learning curves that I've definitely experienced, especially on my last placement, to find your feet as a student and find your voice a little bit as well, which is a bit intimidating. On the same note, though, I think that is also one of the most rewarding things, is when you do find your feet and when you do get that little bit of confidence and you see the impact that you're making out on placement. Like, we're only there for a short period of time, but there are still jobs that stay with you. Like, when you know for a fact that you've made a really good connection with a patient and you've made a difference in their day, that's huge. And that's just a taste of what the rest of your career looks like, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that's great, Millie. Thank you. Another question that's come through the chat is in regards to shift work again, Matt. And the question is, can you choose to do only day shifts or only night shifts? or do you have to alternate?
Yeah, no, I guess again that's employer dependent. Speaking from Ambulance Victoria perspective, I guess there's ways to get a more flexible roster if you need. There's lots of different types of roster styles that are coming out now as well. I'm still on the traditional 10-14 where you do the 2 10-hour days, 2 14-hour nights, and then have 4 off. But there are a lot of different rosters now where you can alternate. You can have 2 days afternoon or 2 afternoons even, and then have days off. You can do a flexible work arrangement where you can opt to just work day shifts if you can arrange that. Again, it all depends on circumstances. But generally, I guess at the end of the day, being an emergency service, it is a 24-hour job. So, I mean, ideally, if you can be available at all hours, but obviously everyone's lives are different. We've all got different things going on in our lives. So there's definitely a big push now to be for more flexibility with that. So, yeah, hopefully as things move along as well, that'll become more common as well. Yeah, that's from what I've seen anyway. Yeah.
And just following on from that, Matt, what's kind of question come through in regards to travel on a shift? Like, what's the furthest distance-wise you'd be expected to travel on a shift?
Yeah. So generally they try to keep us within our catchment. I'm based in Bacchus Marsh, which is just sort of on the outskirts of the metropolitan ambulance area. But saying that, the closest hospital is 45, 50 kilometres away that we transport most patients to from Bacchus Marsh. We could clear there and then pick up a case in that area and be working within that area for the day, or we could come straight back to the Bacchus Marsh. So that's quite a bit of driving in itself. But generally, they try to respond or keep you in your area as best they can. In saying that, even though we're a Bacchus Marsh ambulance, if we're in Footscray dropping someone off, we could get called into the city and spend the night in the city working around in there as well. The furthest have probably gone from Bacchus Marsh is Toorak on the other side of Melbourne, which is probably a good 80, 90 kilometres from our home branch. But again, that was just because we were the closest to respond to a case from where we cleared at the time. So yeah, it's one of the exciting things about the job, I suppose. You never know where you're going to end up in the day.
And that need to have a real flexible mindset as well. I can
definitely, yeah. No, that's right. You tend to you learn the roads around the whole area quite quickly. Because you never know where you're going to get sent to, I guess. But that's I guess I'm lucky in a way, being metropolitan Melbourne. It's still a fairly tight area. You hear of stories of paramedics in Queensland or remote New South Wales travelling 200 kilometres for cases or for transport. So it's I guess it's different where you work. Depends on where you work.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. So the next question is for Millie. Just curious to find out if you have a part-time job at all while you're studying at the moment, Millie, and how many hours do you fit in? And are those jobs aligned with healthcare as such?
Sure. I currently have 4 casual jobs. I think I'm probably the exception, not the rule, though, for most students. I've always kind of had a couple of casual jobs going. So I've got some that are somewhat in the health field and some that aren't. I was working as a first aider for a little bit, which is quite common. A lot of para students work as first aid for local sporting clubs, which I think I've seen a couple of questions about working in the field. And I think first aid is a really good option. So I did that for a little bit, and then I've got a couple of other jobs. I work for the uni. Lots of the students work at the university doing student jobs. As for how many hours I can fit in, I think that varies from person to person, also semester to semester. Some semesters you'll have subjects that have a lot more content or a lot more difficult to wrap your head around. Like I've had some semesters where I've had really heavy content paramedic subjects that I work maybe 3 to 4 hours a week because of how heavy content those subjects are. Whereas this semester I'm working 20 plus hours a week because I can. Once again, that varies student to student based on how you're coping with your study load. I've got lots of friends that work full time though at the same time as studying. It's just about time management really, and making sure that you're on top of your own content and getting through everything, because there's enough hours in the day. It's just how much downtime you want in between, I guess.
Right. So it sounds like it just everyone's different depending on individual circumstance. Yeah, thanks, Millie. Matt, questions come through about do you need a specific license to drive an ambulance?
Again, that's employer specific. For in Victoria, it's just a full license. It used to be, I think, probationary license would cover it, but I think it's just recently gone just a full standard driving license. The ambulances are just under what would be considered the next step's a medium rigid, the next step up. They're just under that weight limit. There are some ambulances that are slightly bigger that you do need an extra license for, but generally for a standard ambulance, it's just a normal driver's license, a full driver's license.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And we've got one of our audience members is really interested in search and rescue, and curious to know, Matt, if there's, are there specialist paramedics who can go in helicopters? And if you know much about that aspect.
Yeah, a little bit. So in Victoria, we have, I think, 5 ambulance helicopters or HEMS units, which are generally staffed by MICA paramedics, so intensive care ambulance paramedics that have had extra training, both university and on the job. They've got quite a number of years of experience as well, but then also extra training in I guess aeromedical, the aeromedical field as well. But also just in the last few years, Victoria's got some, they call them wilderness response paramedics that have started to come in. So they're paramedics that will get extra, generally ALS paramedics, they get extra training to respond to wilderness incidents. So someone stuck up in a mountain somewhere that a helicopter can't respond to straight away, or that a helicopter might not be completely necessary for, they can walk in and provide care in the wilderness, basically. So that's probably the closest thing there. Also, there's specialist flight paramedics as well in Victoria that are both ALS and MICA paramedics. So again, they do some extra training though. So they're more involved with retrieval. So someone that's been brought by road ambulance, for example, into hospital in Mildura, and they need to get transported from Mildura down to the city, down to Melbourne to get further care. They generally work in those areas too. So yeah, there's lots of different areas nowadays. It's not just the helicopter for search and rescue and for those difficult response areas, but yeah, lots of different areas now. So it's pretty exciting.
Thanks, Matt. Millie, during your placement, did you begin to drive the ambulance yourself? And we've got a bit of interest about, whether or not you complete a driving course to help prepare you to travel safely whilst driving at high speed sometimes. Can you talk a little bit about your experience of that at uni?
Sure. So no, as students, we are not supposed to be driving the ambulances. Keyword supposed to. I have heard stories of some students in some certain circumstances which have been driving ambulances. But the general rule is no, the students are not allowed to drive the ambulances. As for driving courses at university, you're not provided with a driving course. Once again, variance from state to state, but in Queensland, I've heard that once you do your grad year, or as part of your grad program, so you do a couple of weeks training from what I've heard, and then you do, I think it's like a week-long driving course with other grad paramedics. So that's once you're employed, that's outside of university, but yes, they go extensively through driving in the grad programs, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, thanks, Millie. We're close to finishing up for this evening, but that time went by really quickly. Another question that's come through though, has there ever been a situation where your paramedic skill or knowledge has been useful while off duty? And I'll ask that of Matt first, perhaps.
Oh, I'm just trying to think of a scenario. I don't think I've been that unlucky to come across anyone unwell or sick while I've been off duty. I guess, oh, no, I can't think of any one episode, I guess.
That's okay. Millie, can
No.
you think of a situation that you've experienced today?
Yeah, definitely, actually. I was first year of the dual degree, and I do a lot of camping with friends, and one summer holidays we were camping on the beach just north of Brisbane, and a couple of k's down from our campsite, a young boy had rolled his car, and there were two people in the car, and we rocked up not long after. And I think in that moment was a realization for me that yes, I'm in the right degree. Like at that point, I'd done mostly nursing subjects. I'd done intro to like how to therapeutically communicate with patients. So it was very baseline stuff. But just knowing, you know, those basic steps, stayed with the patients the whole time, was there when all the paramedics and everyone showed up, and was just kind of a part of the process. But at that point in time, I didn't have a lot of knowledge. Had I been in that situation now, I would have been able to do a lot more, because that's the way the degree works. As you progress through, you learn more. But even just that confidence on how to manage a scene, which you get taught in first year, was crucial, because it was a hectic scene, as you can imagine. Like there was lots of people who had been drinking, and just the ability to manage a scene and kind of isolate the people who needed help from the crowd was a big skill that I didn't realize I had learnt well until I was in that moment. So I think absolutely you learn crucial skills, medical or otherwise, in the degree.
Thanks for that, Millie. We might finish off with a final question. In terms of career progression, Matt, where and in what capacity do you see yourself working in the future as such?
Oh, there's just so many different ways you can go once you start working. I guess once you've finished the undergrad and you've been employed by an ambulance service, you go through your graduate year, you progress through that, you get some experience working on road. Sorry, it's raining really loud here. Hopefully it's not coming through too much. But then, yeah, there's lots of different areas you can take. You could progress on to be an intensive care paramedic. You could go more into education and be a mentor for new graduates, for undergraduate students, or work within education, so to provide education to already qualified paramedics as well. Yeah, there's just so many different areas that you can move into. You could go into be a single response paramedic. You could go more into I guess management. Yeah, it's kind of it's endless. It's not just once you're on road in an ambulance, that's it. There's so many different roles and areas you can move into. I guess I think in any ambulance service in Australia or in the world as well, there's just so many different areas now you can move into. I guess for myself, it's hard to say. At the moment, I've started to work a lot more with students and new graduates. So I think for now, I want to see myself doing that a little bit more, a bit more comfortable with that side of things. But yeah, not sure. It's an exciting job in itself, I guess. The day-to-day work is enough to.
Yeah, I get that
Yeah.
sense, Matt. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. Millie, in terms of you graduating at the end of next year, what are your plans at this stage?
For me, looking forward, obviously it's no secret that it can be hard to find a grad year as a paramedic. So my plan is to apply everywhere and anywhere almost. So I would love a grad year in either Victoria or Queensland, New South Wales potentially as well. So I'll apply there. I'm also more than willing to go. London or Canada would be amazing. That's kind of would be my goal long term. If I could do a grad in Australia and then go overseas for a little bit while I'm young and do a bit of travel as well as working, I think that would be an excellent opportunity. The problem for me is though, when you're at university, you get trained based on your state guidelines. So I think there's a bit of a comfort zone there where I've been taught what my scope is based on Queensland scope of practice. Whereas if I go to Victoria, I've got to relearn that all, which I'm sure I will do happily and willingly if I get a grad somewhere else. But and then as backups, I'm going to apply for emergency nursing in other states as well, just so I can have lots of options and hopefully get something back.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Millie. Just quickly, is there any final bit of advice that you would give to our audience for those who are really thinking about studying paramedicine? Millie, yeah, is there anything that you'd like to share?
Sure. I think my piece of advice would be, obviously coming to things like this, speaking to people in the field, getting a real idea of what it's actually like. If you know any paramedics or even any other student paramedics, having a good chat to them to get a bit of a reality check. I think coming into the degree myself, I had really no idea about what paramedics or nurses did for that matter. So learning a little bit more about that prepares you for what you're walking into. And also just being prepared to work hard, whether that's in high school at the moment, in a drama subject, that's fine, work hard in that, because what you do in high school doesn't determine university, but as long as you can have that work ethic and that drive behind you, you'll be successful. So
yeah, great advice, Millie. Thank you. And Matt, is there any advice that you give our audience as such?
Yeah, I guess if you're thinking of paramedicine as a career choice, again, as Millie said, talk to people, find out if you know anyone that's working in the field, ask them what it's like, get that real firsthand feedback or opinion from them. But also be open as well to ways of where you'll get there as well. It's not always a clear pathway straight in to the work. You may need to look at other options before you get in there, which is perfectly fine, because again, at the end of the day, it's all life experience and it helps with the job. Yeah, that's probably the best.
I think that's a great point to note to end this discussion on. So thanks for that, Matt. For anyone who has any further questions, we had lots of questions come through our Q&A, which was awesome. But if we happen to miss your question, I've got here on the screen our contact details for our Ask ACU team. But for now, Matthew and Millie, thank you so much for your time this evening, and have a great evening, everyone. Good night.